Good evening. Today is Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. The time is now 6 p.m. and this is our budget work session meeting this evening. And we will start off by doing a roll call. Our clerk is not in this evening, so I'll be conducting roll. Councilman Bullis?
Here.
Councilman Bozick here. Councilwoman Epstein is absent this evening. Councilwoman Gutman?
Here.
Councilman Pavlik?
Here.
Councilman Roy?
Here.
And Councilman Rubino?
Here.
All right, we have 6 members present. Oh, I skipped over item number 2. This is a short agenda, and I've already skipped over one thing. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So moving on to item 4, from 2 to 4, we'll start with Mayor Kilway's opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Councilman, Law Director, Finance Director, and members of administration that are here. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy day as we discuss the 2025 budget for the city of Tallmadge. This year's budget represents a shift from previous administration. We're going to move beyond the 2024 status quo that we had, and we're going to emphasize on enhancing city services, economic growth, and quality of life, as we still commit to being fiscally responsible. And we will be fiscally responsible by ensuring that we build upon our strong financial foundations laid out by our past administrations. We're going to focus on strategic investments and prioritize essential infrastructure projects. Only by doing this are we poised to meet the needs of our community while maintaining our financial resilience. As we navigate to the 2025 budget, we're excited to highlight several key initiatives that will enhance public safety and infrastructure. These include repaving and safety upgrades on Howell Road, critical water line replacements, and the addition of new public safety positions within our police and fire departments. In addition to these public safety initiatives, we're making significant improvements in our parks and recreation facilities, including the repair and repainting of the steel slide structure at Macca Park and sand filter maintenance at Macca Pool. Repairs to the community center's roof and gutter, and we will be opening the concession stand at the rec center in the morning to better serve our community and to address their requests. To bolster our public safety infrastructure, we're implementing the addition of 5 automated external defibrillators, AEDs, and cabinets so that it aligns with the recent requirements as set forth by the Ohio Revised Code. In addition, we have the acquisition of 2 new servers that will replace end-of-life units. This will ensure reliable IT structure that maximizes server uptime and enables seamless operations across all city departments. A significant investment in the 2025 budget includes a lease to own for a truck-mounted leaf vacuum machine, which will enhance the city's capacity to manage leaf collection efficiently while supporting compliance with EPA stormwater management requirements. These investments reflect our ongoing commitment to providing the highest levels of service to our residents. Lastly, communication with our community remains a priority. Through initiatives like the Tallmadge Circular newspaper, we will keep residents informed about important city developments and recreational opportunities. Furthermore, we are committed to pursuing grant funding that will further support our public safety initiatives and quality of life projects. Together, these efforts will not only improve services, but they also strengthen the bonds within our community, ensuring a safer and more vibrant Tallmadge for all. I want to thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions after our budget presentation.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is ordinance 2024-65, presentation of the 2025 budget by our Director of Administration, Joe Ignazita.
Thank you, Council President Bozick, Council members, Mayor, Director of Law, Director of Finance, members of the administration, and those of you watching on YouTube. Good evening. I first want to start off by thanking Council for bearing with me as I go through the first round of developing a budget And sorry things were piecemeal to you, but I wanted to get them to you as soon as they were ready. I also would like to thank the Director of Finance, Ms. Gilbride, for all her help and support as I worked through this. So with that being said, I think the mayor provided a good overview. So we'll go ahead and get right into slide number 2. This slide shows the appropriations totaled by each fund and the total appropriations for the city's 2025 budget. The 2025 budget for the city of Tallmadge is $58,263. $263,000. You can see the number. I'm a little nervous. Okay. Last year's budget was $46,555,561. The significant changes to this year's budget is some of the things the mayor has already just mentioned. The $3.9 million improving Howe Road, up to $5.6 million new dollars in water lines. If you take away these two projects, so 5.6 and 3.9, if you take away these two investments that we have in the budget, that would get your budget down to approximately $48,700,000. Using 2.4% as the annualized rate of inflation on last year's budget, we would have a budget this year that would take us to $47,000.4 million if it were a flat budget. Our current budget, minus the two projects that I've mentioned and the cost of inflation, actually give you approximately $1 million over the 2023 budget. Taking into account $703,000, the approximate cost of payroll, and I have that number wrong, the the $703,000 increase in payroll, you're left with about $300,000 over the original budget. So taking into account two major projects, inflation and increased payroll, which increased public safety personnel, an administrative clerk or administrative assistant civil service position, two police officers, 3 firefighters, 3 actual police officer hires next year because 1 officer is anticipating retiring. So that's where that number takes you down to. What I'd like to do briefly, several of the slides I'll go into detail with a little bit more on, but while we're on this slide, I just want to highlight some funds that I don't have any real charts on, but for your information, these are for the funds that require minimum fund balance, and I'll discuss that briefly in just a moment. The fire fund is primarily supported by property tax revenue from permanent levy, and it's supplemented by a transfer from the general fund and proceeds from ambulance services. For 2025, the fire fund will meet the minimum fund balance requirement with a general fund transfer of $2.5 million. This is a reduction of a transfer last year. We needed $3.05 million transfer. As mentioned, the fire EMS levy will also fund the additional full-time firefighter paramedics. The next fund I want to talk about is street maintenance and repair, and it's really a street, maintenance and repair because it's kind of all-encompassing. SMR fund is primarily funded by is primarily funded by a transfer from general funds supplemented by gasoline and motor vehicle registration fees, as outlined as were required from the Ohio Revised Code. For 2025, the SMR fund meets the required minimum balance with a general fund transfer of $2,186,000. This transfer represents a 29% reduction from the previous year's transfer. I would also note that this year's general fund transfer is going to road capital improvement funds. The SMR supports a wide range of essential maintenance and equipment needs. Couple highlights you'll see in the back of the book where we have some of the projects highlighted, is the installation of 5 guardrails at Tallmadge Circle. You'll also see a historic photo that the Tallmadge Circle actually had bollards at one time in place that Director of Service Mike Rohr found that, so this is nothing new. Construction of phase 1 of the cremation park, also in the back of your budget book, under SMR, you'll see some information that Director Rohr has provided on that. The lease of a new berm mower, there's issues, and Director of Service Rohr can go over this, but there's issues with the current berm mower. We were going to try to extend that for a year. They were unable to do so after we started budget discussions, and so we have now added that. And then also, this fund also includes replacement of 3 service trucks, pickup trucks, F-550s and 350s, in the service department that are sorely in need of replacement. I'd also note that while not funded out of SMR, if this budget's approved, starting in 2025, the High Road Improvement Project will include that repaving, restriping, adding pedestrian islands and pedestrian island at Freedom Trail Crossing and bike lanes. Notably, this is accounted for in the Road Capital Improvement Fund rather than SMR funds. These strategic investments in street maintenance, equipment, and infrastructure demonstrates the city's ongoing commitment to maintaining and enhancing essential services for the community. Just a couple more funds. The Water Operating Fund, the city remains dedicated to maintaining and upgrading its water infrastructure through a portion of the user fees collected, ensuring the system remains in optimal working condition. In line with these commitments, the 2025 budget advances the city's long-term asset management strategy by funding ongoing multi-year, a 12-year asset management strategy for maintenance, repair, and inspections of our water tower. We're in year 2, and that's ongoing. Finally, one last fund I'll highlight is the Richardson Trust Fund. Although not a major fund, the Richardson Trust Fund includes a $5,000 allocation from a donation authorized by City Council from the general fund. This trust is designated to provide one-time assistance to eligible individuals within the city of Tallmadge. And I misspoke. I did add the Ohio Water Development Authority. The Ohio Water Development Authority offers local government and agencies in Ohio means of financing local shares of cost of water and wastewater projects. The OWDA loans are revenue obligations, not general obligations, of the LGAs and are payable from revenues of the system that are improved. The city intends to use OWDA loan funds to finance up to $5,677,000 for several water line replacements. Those are listed also in the back of your book. Pending, Mayor, if we could go to the next slide. In your briefing book, you'll see a red tab identifying all 6 funds and a minimum fund balance. In the 2025 budget projections, all 6 funds exceed their required minimums. The ordinance that established a minimum fund balance requirements were approved in 2005 and continue. As we go through the year, we'll continue to closely monitor expenses and execute budgets in a fiscally responsible way, adhering guidance to what is approved by council. Slide number 4, please. As you can see from the 2025, income tax revenue for the general fund is projected to exceed $15.7 million. This is an estimated increase of approximately 12% over the 2024 estimates. And if we could move to the next slide, unless there's any questions.
Can you go back to the slide, please?
Oh, there we go. The Safety Service Income Tax Revenue. Safety Service Income Tax Fund is projected to increase by more than 8% to $1.7 million. The Safety Service Income Tax Fund is supported by a 0.25% income tax, which was implemented in 2020. This is specifically designated for safety services, which include police and fire capital projects. For 2025, the fund meets the minimum fund balance with an anticipated revenue, as you can see, of $1.7 million, an estimated 8% increase over the previous years. This fund is dedicated to covering significant capital costs for police and fire services, including essential equipment, vehicles, and outfitting of med units. Outfitting of all our vehicles are actually very costly and something I did not realize till doing this year's budget. Key capital investments planned for 2025 include continued improvements at the police station and Fire Station 1, as well as acquisition of 3 new police cruisers and a 4th from a grant which we were awarded from the state, which will be administered by the Summit County Sheriff's Office, and then 2 new fire department chase vehicles or SUVs. The Safety Service Income Tax Fund also supports debt service for major safety equipment, including fire engines, squads, and radios, as well as $659,540 debt service transfer for Fire Station 2 and the tower truck. As both the police department and the Fire Station 1 near 50 years of service, the 2025 budget includes an assessment of each facility to evaluate the structural integrity and determination of long-term viability of both of those structures. This assessment will inform future planning and funding needs, ensuring that the safety service infrastructure remains strong and suitable for our police officers and firefighters performing their duties. If we could move to slide number 6. This is a general fund. What you see here is a beginning estimated balance. All of these are estimates of $11,520,645. Total revenues. Total revenues, as you can see, are $21,034,000. Expenditures, and then our projected ending balance next year. So you can see where we expect to start January 1st at 11.5, and then based on revenues and expenditures, we anticipating having a fund balance, a projected ending balance in 2025 of approximately $8.5 million. These funds will exceed the required minimum fund balance. Any questions on this slide?
Question, and this is probably for Ms. Gilbride. What sets the minimum required fund balance?
There is an ordinance that was passed in 2005 that provides a calculation that it is 25% of expenditures in the general fund minus transfers, capital, and those things. So basically operating expenditures.
Got it.
Before you begin, so based on that calculation, do we update that on an annual basis then?
We calculate it every year when we do the budget.
The percentage of the expenses, right?
Correct.
Right.
So we used the 2025 budget that we are presenting to calculate what the minimum required fund balance would be at the end of 2025.
Okay, so every year essentially, it gets renewed or revised.
It gets recalculated, yes.
It's a fluid number.
Yes,
Thank you.
based on the
Yep,
budget.
that's what I wanted to make sure, that it wasn't a 2005 number that we had set.
No,
It
no,
hasn't updated since.
it's a
Yep.
calculation.
Thank you.
And just one of my notes I wanted to go back to with this slide is that the city successfully built the reserve within the general fund, as you can see. Allows for strategic spending while maintaining a fund balance for unforeseen emergencies. So that while that's set by ordinance, that's where the minimum fund balance requires us to come up with a plan if we were to ever go below that. So we try not ever, obviously, to go below that, and we don't budget to do that. So we're continuing fiscally conservative policies that have been through past administrations, which have served us well to get us to where we are today, as you can see from the graphs, some of the graphs we've already shown.
Question, just for my own edification, because there's a couple new people here on council, what did 24 look like? Like, what would, if you were to say general fund 2024, what did that look like? And you probably don't know the answer, that's fine, we can get it later Molly might know.
So I believe if you were to go back and look at our 2024 budget, it looked like probably we would end with a $7 million fund balance.
So you ended with, that's what you were projecting.
That
That's what you're
was
projecting, but we ended with 11.
correct.
Okay, all right, that's where I was trying to get at, okay.
Any other questions on this slide before I move on? Okay, the next slide, slide 8, capital funds, please. Oh, I'm sorry, general funds. Our general fund balance, as you can see, to answer your question, too many slides in and out. General fund serves as the city's primary operating fund, is primarily funded by income tax revenues, complemented by intergovernmental revenue and recreation fees, fines, and permits. For 2025, income tax revenues from the general fund is expected to be $15.7 million, an estimated increase of approximately 12% over the 2024 budget. The strong growth outlook is promising as income tax remains a primary revenue source for general fund, enabling it to support other critical funds such as fire fund, street maintenance repairs, and the Howe Road Improvement Project, the Awada funds, and other major projects. The city successfully built reserves within the general fund, allowing for strategic spending while maintaining a fund balance above the minimum requirements. This fiscally responsible policy has positioned the city well to respond to unforeseen circumstances, as I just talked about, and offers greater flexibility in the event needs arise. These initiatives are reflected in their that I've just talked about in their respective fund balances, with the general fund capital items detailed in the 2025 budget summary that we'll discuss next. Key improvements also out of the general fund include community center upgrades, engineer planning for the recreation center roof repair, which will be funded in a future budget year, and other designated capital investments, each contributing to the city's operational integrity and quality of life enhancements for our residents. So you're aware of the capital projects I mentioned are the white tab on your book. If we can go to slide 8 for capital funds. So we've spoke about, we've highlighted several of the projects already. These are the detailed breakouts. So some of the things we've talked about on here, we've already talked about. We have to show the grant coming in as income, so it goes there. The community center exterior I talked about. This fund also covers hoop winches at the community center, ball field fence replacement at Lions Park, some capital items for the garage to make their work more efficient, door access control replacement, panels and additions of note to the community center to make running the community center easier. Instead of something keyed, it can be controlled electronically and locked at certain times. Of note, a very significant investment this year is 2 servers. We have 2 servers that in October of this year, so just under a year from now, reach end of life, which means they will not be provided updates or warranty service available. So they're 6 years old. So in the budget, this funds both an on-site production server that we use day to day for all of us use across the city, and then it requires not on-site at the city building, but within city limits, a disaster recovery backup system in case of a catastrophic incident. So it builds redundancy and mirrors what we're doing today. In the police capital, I've talked about those items. Of note, across police, fire, and services, the service radios, their handhelds, reach actual end of life on June 1st. They will no longer, because of requirements for security type requirements related to the SECC, we have to obtain new radios for the service department. So in the past, I'm sorry, Mike, but in the past, the service department gets the hand-me-downs, if you will, that still have service life on them. So that is broken up across the police and fire department. And then we're buying 9 mobile radios that will go in the large trucks, such are used for snow clearance in the wintertime. Those radios across the whole spectrum represent about $360,000, if I remember correctly. We now have a 4-year budget cycle strategic plan to replace those. And while I'm mentioning strategic plans of budget, working with the finance director, we are going to be purchasing a small investment of around, I believe it's $13,000 for a budgeting software that will connect with the current budgeting software we use to, I believe it was you, Councilman Pavlik, talking about strategic planning. This will institutionalize strategic planning, so all these major life cycle repairs, replacements, everything from servers to radios to vehicles can be tracked, and we can, as the administration's already done previously, we've leveled it out with the fleet management program and the vehicles, how we lease those programs, and then take the purchase option or receive them or then sell them. Same type of leveling out the budget. That's a plan. We'll implement that for the next round of budgeting next year. We'll get training started on that probably in late April, early May, and we'll have an additional tab to this book next year of strategic planning across, so we can see where the peaks and valleys are going to be, because unfortunately sometimes that's just the way that things work, but it's to minimize that, those peaks and valleys. A couple of things I mentioned, one of the things there was water damage, it's considerable water damage at Challenger Field. So one of the items that we'll be doing is gutter and downspout replacements done by the Department of Public Service. I talked about the cremation park. Director Aurora has a good brief and an example of what that will look like. If you haven't seen that, I don't know if we can scan that or just bring it to a council meeting. It's a nice project. Then finally, on the last page are the OWDA loans that are projected to cost $5.6 million. I was not familiar with OWDA loans. I'm not sure if Ms. Gilbride would like to talk, is the council familiar with these? I am not. So,
They're just offered through the state as a kind of easy way for governments to finance. Oh, I thought I turned it off. Must have turned it off. Must have been on. OWDA is the Ohio Water Development Authority. They offer statewide to local governments, basically a loan application through their own bondings that they do through the state of Ohio. So they're able to issue large amount of bonds each year through the state of Ohio, which allows smaller government entities to take loans through them and receive a better interest rate possibly than they would if they were to go out. And it's also a much easier, streamlined way of obtaining the loans. These are the projects we're proposing. I cannot guarantee that we will get financing for all of these, but we want to have them available for that. So we will take a look at these once the budget year begins, determine, we do have to go through an application process with OWDA, get approved, that we, just like kind of a bank, they do an approval process where you actually have to get approved that they believe that you have the funding to pay for them and those kind of things. So that will be a process. So we'll analyze that as the year goes to determine which of these projects we would actually apply for the loan for. So we would only do the projects that we actually get approved for the loans for.
Okay. Question, how long are these loans usually for?
You can actually do however long you want, 10, 20, you can do up, I think, to 25 years. We have one, we did the Northeast Avenue Pump Station. That was a 25-year loan. We also did a water line on South Avenue that we did for 10. That is coming off of our books next year
okay.
after.
Okay.
So it's flexible.
Ms. Gilbride, I just had a question about the accounting. Is the 5.6 million, this is just me not having finance background, set aside just to demonstrate that we have it, or is that some percentage of the total project?
No, that would be 100% of the project, but we would fund it 100% through a loan. So if we were not authorized for the loan, we would not do the project. So that's why it's its own separate fund. We're not going to use any other funding source to pay for it other than the loan. And then once we received the loan and the project was done, then we would be required out of the water operating fund to pay the debt service back over the 10 or 15 or whatever financing period that we opted to do for those.
So that's pictured as if we got the loan revenue in its entirety, but it could change if we don't get it all.
Correct.
Okay, so
It's like a placeholder, but we
Placeholder,
can't
okay.
spend all of it if we don't get a loan for all of it, kind of a thing.
thank you, that's what I was going for.
It's a wash, it just.
Correct. It's just, there's a revenue that offsets it in that fund, and if we don't get all the revenue, then we don't spend on the projects.
That number will go down then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think this is also a great way to indicate and to show everybody the amount of infrastructure improvements that we need to plan for the future. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So.
And any application for a loan would require further councilmatic approval that we apply for it. You'd have to apply for us to bid the project. So this, you will see this again before we actually can even spend the money. Even though it's appropriated, there's going to be more councilmatic action that's going to need to take place to do the projects.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think it would be eligible for 5.677?
No.
Okay. But I remember the question being, it depends on which project is worse.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes. So we kind of are letting the winter take place to see kind of what happens with different lines. Do we have an extra break in any of them? That kind of thing, and then we'll make that determination.
But this is showing, and I guess I want to preference everyone that's listening, and this is showing that these are things that we have to do, whether or not this year, but we've got down the line.
Correct.
That we've got to do.
Absolutely.
So I have a question about that. So you had stated that it would come out of our water operating infrastructure reserve?
The debt service would come out of our water operating account.
Okay.
Typically, we don't pay our debt service out of the infrastructure reserve. We do like smaller projects out of there because only 8% of our water fees go into the infrastructure fund.
Just to clarify then, account 572, I think it looks like.
Yes, 572 is where the debt service payments would come out
So
of.
explain to us then the numbers that you have in those columns. So the beginning unencumbered balance at 1.6, and then the next column, budget revenue of 1.9, and then the expenses of 2.7. So go explain to us like how each.
So there is not so the fund balance, that's the estimated beginning fund balance. The first column is the anticipated revenue we expect to receive in that fund with the current user fees that we have in place. The second column is the operating expenses and the appropriation that we're presenting to council for approval. And then, so you have the beginning fund balance plus the revenue minus the expenses gets you to the ending fund balance. And yes, part of our conversation, and I have mentioned this several times at council, is we need to look at our water fees. They have not been raised since 2012. So anticipate, and I think it's very well demonstrated in this upcoming budget, especially with all of these water projects that we have and water lines that need replaced with our aging infrastructure, that we're going to have to take a long-term look at our water rates. So probably, I've talked with the mayor and the service director, it's likely we'll try to present something by the first quarter to council so that midway through the year, we can potentially have a discussion about a water rate increase. So that is our goal, especially too with the, we're going to have a new water contract. Akron just raised our rates pretty significantly last year. So we definitely are going to need to have that hard conversation about raising those rates.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. And so looking at it, we're spending obviously more than we have allotted for revenue-wise. And this is pretty consistent with, because I have last year's budget here in front of me as well, pretty consistent. Last year was 416,000 that we were basically pulling from the general fund to help cover that.
No, those are all coming out of the fund balance. So we don't supplement the water or the sewer funds with general fund revenue. That would not, we could, but we have not supplemented, we do not supplement water or sewer operations with general fund money.
So that.
It's strictly user fees. So we have been eating at that. Could you go to the slide with the water
Yeah, I guess
fund
explain to
fund
us how,
balance,
if we're
please?
continuously spending more than we have.
So here's go back one.
Okay.
You're correct. So we were seeing small, starting in 2020, we were seeing small little eating away of the balance. But between 2023 and 2024, with the water increase that we had in the significant water usage, we're seeing a huge decline from there. So we were patiently waiting because we were not having these huge dips. It was something we knew we had to look at it, but it wasn't enough, and we were well over our fund balance requirements, and we were raising sewer rates. So we didn't want to kind of be hitting on both sides, so we were able to handle it. But with the water charges that we've had from the city of Akron this year, it has eaten that fund balance significantly. And so we need to act.
Okay, thank you. That you did a better job of explaining it than what I was trying to ask. But so for example, the minimum fund balance for that account is $644,000 and some change. So, we're at ending balance of 816. We're getting really close. And
Correct. And if you look, I'm estimating we're at 1.6 million. We're going to cut that in half, and if we do it again, we'll be at zero. So we're going to have to make some moves.
And then, so I guess this is probably a better formulated question would be, what happens if we did run it to zero? Then how do we make up the shortfall?
We would have to use general fund money to do that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're allowed to use general fund money to do
General fund money can be used
for any bucket.
For any bucket of money that you want. Obviously, we would
Do you
try
wanna
not,
stop that?
we don't want to do that, or we would have to definitely figure something out. There might be an opportunity, to borrow from other temporarily borrow. So what we could do is what we call an advance from the general fund. So we could allow the fund to borrow money from the general fund temporarily. And then as we bring the fund balance up, we can pay the general fund back once we've recovered. So back to our minimum fund balance policy, it does require, once you go below the minimum fund balance, which in these funds, it's also 25% because they're self-sufficient. The fund balance policy has a process that we have to go through to make sure we get back to meeting that minimum fund balance, which includes assessing fees, looking at expenditures, and those kind of things. So we're getting close, so it's definitely on the radar. But this year, really, as you can see, we've slowly been kind of creeping, and new water rates needed to be looked at, but this year just really caught us off guard.
So when you apply for an OWDA loan, what does that agency look at in terms of financial statements? Does it look into the whole city financials, or they just look specifically to the water?
They will just look at the water fund. So I will have to do actual 20-year projection.
Yeah.
But they do accept and will consider that you
You've
can
stopped
build, right,
Yeah.
and they'll also consider that you can budget anticipated rate increases.
Yeah.
So what we would likely do is come up with, a short-term plan for some rate increase, and then budget that in before we make application.
Got
Kind of
it.
assess that before we apply.
Yeah.
And then go through the process of having a longer-term rate plan that we can present to them.
And that's what they want to see?
And that's what they
That
wanna
wanna
see.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have one more follow-up question with that. So on average, obviously, this is just paying for our water operating, so we get billed, we pay the bill. So as far as the infrastructure goes, on average, what would you say in the last, say, 5 years we've spent on the infrastructure? Just off the top of your head, I know it's kind of a strange question on the spot, but
We've added one new water line. As far as infrastructure goes, it's just repairs.
does that infrastructure cover like the normal, we have a water line break, we got to replace it. We got a fire hydrant that gets hit, we got to replace it. So it's anything like that, any maintenance done on the water system as a whole.
Yep.
So if you were to put a dollar amount on that, say for this past year.
Get it for you at the next meeting.
Okay, all right. Just so I kind of have an understanding of, if we, as a city, are averaging 750,000, 500,000 a year, it gives me an idea of, here's what we might want to do in addition to your loans or projects, I should say, to anticipate some more of that long-term maintenance, so.
Well, and we are paying out of the water infrastructure fund.
Right.
We did enter into the long-term agreement on the water tower, which was a really important issue that we needed to
Yeah.
take place. So we have a 10-year payment plan that we're in on that to get all of those improvements made. So that's a pretty significant chunk of our water infrastructure fund for the next few years.
Thank you.
What caused the biggest decrease since 2003? Was it just the maintenance, or is it water rates?
Yeah, so that would be the issues that we're currently having. So we had the water rate increase from Akron. We've had a significant amount of increased water usage that we were trying to track down. We've had several water main breaks and things that basically what I would call unbilled water. So we've lost water that we have to pay for that we can't bill back to the residents. So the Akron water bill is really what is driving the drop between 2003 and 2004. We had budgeted for a smaller decrease, but this large decrease is because of that increase
So
in the water
primarily
bill.
being the increase from Akron, can you tell me what that increase was percentage-wise?
Let me look it up. I think I put it in one of my old reports, but I don't have it off the top of my head, but I will get it. I will get it for you.
Thank you.
I guess, kind of changing topics, I had one question about what are the other capital expenditures you were discussing. In here, it has a 3-year plan for the radios. And
Well, it's a 4-year plan.
4-year plan, okay.
It's the first year and then the subsequent 4 years to replace all those radios.
Okay. And so these radios, obviously, you know, these aren't, can't buy them off the shelf type radios. These are very specific to municipal use and whatnot. So are there alternatives to the types of radios we use, I guess? Is there another option that cities are using that are not, say, a personal radio like this?
I'm sorry, is brand name specific, is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean, is it,
The radios, okay, I understand. The radios we're using now, especially for our police department, because of encryption capabilities required for their duties, in all our radios for security, our radios are not just radios that the city uses. They're computers. I mean, they are. And so they are, there's only a handful, actually less than a handful, probably 2 high-quality manufacturers that we can use that will work with the radio system that we have. And when I say that we have, that we're contracted through the Council of Governments to use for the SECC. And so we have, we've looked at options. We can get radios that are 2/3 the cost of these for services to use. But then we still have to replace these radios because of not necessarily end of life, but end of parts. So if we take all the radios from police and fire over 4 years, put them on the shelves, we can have them repaired with the parts and extend the life of these. There's no computer code, security code issues with with those radios that they're going to come off the line anytime soon. They'll be serviceable well into the future, but its replacement parts is what the radios do. The 2 major radio manufacturers, what it's been explained to me is it's a 10-year from the production of the last radio. So you can keep, if we buy radios now and they're halfway through their production run, you get 15 years out of a radio. You can extend the life of that if you have your own parts to put in. And that's what this project does, is provides us with the stock of radios that public service can use. Does that answer your question?
yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Director, oh, sorry.
So with that particular purchase, we are going to utilize, in order to pay for that, what account are we utilizing? We're utilizing the Safety Services Income Tax Fund account?
For police and fire radios, yes.
Okay,
They're listed under page 1 of 3 on the capital budget summary, the white tab. And you can see there, I'll put line numbers next time. But if you look at under 204 Safety Service and you look down under radios, you have replacement of 14 portable radios for the fire department, and then, for police department. And then the radios are also down under fire capital, a very similar comment in the notes section.
Okay.
Replacement is.
So just to kind of, the reason I asked the question is to, one, I think just being transparent that we're utilizing a fund that was approved by the city for safety services. And that's why I wanted to ask a question, just to make sure, put it on the record that, we're being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and spending that fund money on infrastructure that's going directly to our police, fire, and being utilized in that way. Not that we're going to not do that, but just
Right, absolutely.
as a general, kudos on utilizing it correctly, I guess. But my other question then, I think maybe Councilmember Urbano had a question though pertaining to the radios before I go on.
Yeah, just quickly, and kind of to Adam's point, have we explored other technology like cellular for the non-emergency services that might be considerably cheaper than, I mean, I understand especially, emergency services needing certain communication, and I know when I saw that in the budget, I was like, wow, those are expensive. In the industry I'm in, I've got drivers that are out in the system with handhelds that have very similar capabilities. Now, they're not in an emergency capacity, but have we explored if that would be a more cost-effective, like a cell phone or handheld type service?
So what we're doing is, as we replace the police and fire radios, which are necessary, we're actually giving them down the old ones to the other departments. So we're basically taking an asset and recycling it. So there's, other than the monthly cost we pay for the radio maintenance, they're basically getting an asset that we already own at no cost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying the older radios aren't held to the same standard?
Correct. They don't need the same level of all of those things. So we're able to maintain those easier because they don't require, they're just using them as more communication tools, and they don't need that level. But because we are in need of replacement of the safety radios, it just made more sense instead of buying them something else where the radios are still useful for what they need them for.
Does that include the vehicle-mounted ones that were in the budget?
Those vehicle-mounted ones.
Right, and we don't have, so those are so when they're driving, they do not have to actually, they can use radio without taking their hands off of the,
To utilize hands-free driving.
Is that considered one-touch?
I'm not sure what the technology is, but it's to assist so when they're driving, they don't
Are they
have,
allowed to actually drive and operate
A radio?
the radios?
And snowplow device, yeah. So there's a lot of remotes and controls in those dashboards.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And those radios, if you will, all are alternatives. The police-mounted radios, those aren't, we don't do the hand-me-downs. We do buy a lesser version, like you're talking about, a commercial off-the-shelf type that, that's already out there. So we are taking advantage of that type of opportunity as a cost saving, where we do have to buy radios or services.
Thank you. Since we're on technology still, going back to the servers that you mentioned, believe they were, 200-some thousand for the server. Have we looked into whether or not it would be more suitable to have remote server service instead of having our own in-house?
Yes, we did. The initial budget quote that we received was double the cost of this. And so then we said, okay, we're not going to go with this option. And we ended up having discussions, and what happened is that we were looking at off-site to only keep the production server we need to have. The off-site was actually more expensive than the on-site server over the cost of a 5-year contract. And if we did have a catastrophic incident and needed to use that, there's a very limited amount of backup that you get with that contract. If you have to do a full backup, it is incredibly cost prohibitive because they do that backup, and I would need Mr. Delaney here to explain it. But they do that at off hours, and when you're doing a disaster backup, you're now taking over prime pipes of your provider, and so they charge you per amount of data. So we did look at on-site, off-site. We were going to go with that. Things were too expensive. We went out, got more quotes. We got a better quote for same server, and once the prices came down to where they're at, it was better to go with both on-site for production and disaster recovery.
Okay, thank you. And then is that, I guess, the original sticker shock, is it more an upfront cost to kind of get us up and running? And then after that would be just an annual cost?
Yeah.
Or it's a upfront cost plus a very high annual
For-
cost?
There's, I have to look at the quote. I don't recall an annual cost.
I believe this
there's
is
a-
just the equipment purchase.
Right.
Like, it's
Right.
a one-time equipment purchase.
Right, yeah, I know, for what we have planned as a one-time purchase of the server, but if we were to go to remote, did the sticker shock of that, was it upfront cost to actually do like a changeover to them?
Yes, there was a cost.
And then the annual
Monthly.
amount after that for service
Yes, it
is
was.
still fairly large, is that what I'm understanding, is that?
It was, yes, it was, it's $30,000 to $50,000 more for just having the disaster recovery available compared to what this quote was. And then the added cost of if we had to, which we have great infrastructure, we have great cybersecurity, we all get that, anyway, we won't
Right.
talk about it here. But we have great cybersecurity, and it's going to cost, but it would cost us a lot more money to recover everything in the event of a disaster. And so that would, you're talking the price of a server
Got it, okay, thank you.
because of that prioritization and what they do and having it at prime time. And then it would take quite a bit of time to recover, like a couple of days to download everything and then get the network back up. The quote is under capital. It's got an orange hue to it for the switches, and it's right in front of that. You can see what's actually in that quote. MNJ Technologies. But to go into any detail with that, I'd have to defer to Mr. Delaney. Any other questions? We just got a couple more slides and really one because we've already talked to one.
You need me to go back to a certain slide? Forward a little
The
bit.
backwards, the sanitary sewer fund.
There we go.
So the sewer and water, okay, thank you. The sewer and water infrastructure funds operate as an enterprise fund, meaning they're funded through user fees and designated to fully support their respective operations. The city remains committed to reinvesting these funds into repairs and replacements of sanitary sewer infrastructure to ensure the system's ongoing reliability and effectiveness. In 2025, funding includes the sewer system televising and cleaning, utilizing city-owned equipment and city-trained personnel, or trained personnel that are city employees. And then ongoing water meter replacements to ensure accurate tracking. By conducting these sewer and television cleaning in-house, we're saving ourselves money to do that. So that's something that you started a few years back, and we continue to do that. So that's another cost savings, because that can be very expensive. And what that does is we're actually televising and reviewing the sanitary sewer infrastructure for the entire city over an extended period of time. So I just found that fascinating coming here to do that. Pretty neat. Sorry. Next slide, please. And we have talked about this fund. I would just say that my closing comment for this slide was it'd be prudent for the city to begin internal strategic discussions on user fees in order to maintain a healthy fund balance in the water operating fund moving forward. So,
Director, if, that's such a stark contrast between the two funds. One is obviously dropping like a rock and one is climbing fairly steady. Are we expecting the sewer rates to also increase dramatically? Is that why we're keeping that fund? I guess that's stocked.
We're getting a sewer increase next year from the city. It's not gonna be as shocking as the last one was, but it's definitely an increase again.
Are those funds that, if need be, obviously we're getting close to the required minimum on this, that can be moved to avoid taking out of the general fund if there's a shortfall?
I have never done it before, so they cannot be permanently moved, but there may be mechanisms, and I would have to do research and investigate, for the water fund to actually borrow money from the sewer fund, but they would have to pay it back.
Gotcha.
So the sewer fund can't give the water fund the money, but they could set up I believe there's a mechanism to allow it to borrow if we would need to do that, to temporarily take care of that. But we would have to legally research how that would be structured.
Thank you.
Go back a slide. There you go.
Thank you. Oh, never mind. Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question about you asked yourself the question in your head and answered it. Thank you. So
Fascinating.
We've all been there.
So if you can go back a slide. So in looking at that, the fund balance is revenue that is generated from our billing. And then to offset that for our expenses, this is XYZ amount that we have from the City of Akron and infrastructure cost.
And some account, so sewer.
You're not.
Mike.
Sewer, we pay two different entities for sewer processing. We pay Akron for part of the city, and then we have to pay Summit County Department of Environmental Services for part of the city. So there's two different entities that we deal with on user fees. A couple years ago, they both implemented some pretty high user rate fees. We passed those on to our residents. We have not, due to the efficiency of our sewer department and them keeping our lines cleaned and all of those things, we have not seen while the rates are up, the charges for the level of sewer going through and being billed are not equaling kind of what we anticipated, so that's why you're seeing the fund balance go up. So we did institute those fees. Those fees should be able to be held for a while we work on getting the water fund back into a good place, pending any significant fee increases from Summit County or Akron.
I guess my question would be then, do we have any project that we could, sorry, my question is, do we have any project that we could, I don't want to deplete the account, obviously, but is there a project sitting out there that is maybe not shovel-ready, but something, Mr. Ward, that you know, it's a concern that we are eventually going to have to address this, and maybe now's a good time to do it since the funds are there.
We have several relining projects that we're going to try to attempt to do next year, but it's not enough. I mean, it's a splash. I mean, it's nothing that would eat that down any. And there again, I'm very cautious because we are getting another increase starting next year. Over the next 3 years, it's probably 6%. So I'm cautious in spending, that fund's good right now.
Right.
I wouldn't go crazy spending that money because we got a water problem going on with the water bill. So that fund's good. That's a solid fund. I'd let that ride for a little bit.
All right.
We are still doing infrastructure, and we're still working on that, and we've replaced the one that was out in the circle, remember, this year. So that's the televising and cleaning that's helping, so we are able to get a better grip on those lines. So we are replacing and doing some infrastructure updates for sure.
And that was a sewer rehab, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the 140, I'm looking at the October financials, that was 144,520. So the other, under 571, year-to-date through October, you're 71% utilize your expenses. So we're under the expenses, but like you said, we had capital overlay, and you're going to have it going forward. You're going to have an increase, so.
And just to give you, we will have one more large, we pay Summit County quarterly, so we have one more quarterly bill coming up, so that's kind of a big hit. So I just want to identify, like, if you're looking at like the Summit County expense line, we pay them quarterly, we pay Akron monthly, so it might look a little farther behind than it is because we'll have those bills are running between $450,000 a quarter.
In the budget for '24, we had a line item called master meter replacement, and it doesn't look like we've done anything. Is that something that's carried over to '25?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If you could go forward, please, Mayor, and forward. Just a quick JET update, the revenue projections for 2025. As you can see, there are 1.91 million, which would be the city's share. The JET tax rate moves in 2025 from 1.75 to 2%. Couple of projects under construction, which will increase the revenue. The VA of Northeast Ohio announced they're opening their first Northeast Ohio Cancer Treatment Infusion Center in Brimfield. That is in the JET. I know the mayor announced that a while back. Still under construction. And then you can see the engineering firm up there is also building a new headquarters in the JET. That engineering headquarters is not only for them, but they're also building office space out for their contractors that work with them, and their people they work with on a regular basis will be co-located with them. And we continue to build our strong partnership with Brimfield's Economic Development, and the mayor has regular meetings. We have regular meetings or calls, and the JED meeting is coming up in December, early December.
Question on the JED revenue. Is there a cap on the amount of revenue that we received on an annual basis?
No, we get 50% of the.
No matter what, okay, whatever it is.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
And next slide, please. Excuse me. In summary, the 2025 budget reflects our unwavering commitment to fiscal responsibility while ensuring continued growth and sustainability of the city. By maintaining prudent financial policies and building reserves, we've positioned ourselves to respond flexibly to unforeseen challenges and opportunities. This careful stewardship allows us to invest in essential services without compromising the financial health of the city. Central to this budget are the enhancements to the city services that directly benefit our residents. By prioritizing critical infrastructure projects such as the repaving of Howe Road, the replacement of key water lines, we're not only improving public service, but also enhancing the overall quality of life in our community. The addition of new personnel in the police and fire department underscores our commitment to public safety, ensuring that we have resources necessary to protect and serve our citizens effectively and efficiently. Furthermore, the budget focuses on economic development, including the funding of an economic developer position, and highlights our proactive approach to fostering growth and opportunities in Tallmadge. By investing in our community's future, we aim to create a vibrant local community that supports businesses and attracts new investment. Through these efforts, we're dedicated to build an even brighter future for the city of Tallmadge, where residents can thrive and the community can flourish. Thank you, and pending your questions, that concludes the budget brief.
Members of council, this is our opportunity to ask away. So,
Mr. Bozick, I have a question for Mr. Rohr. I think it was last year that we had budgeted for engineering for the possible tunnel underneath the circle to better access the park. What's the status of that?
It's about 95% complete, the engineering is.
Okay, do we
So-
anticipate then like applying for a grant? or-
Correct. Yep. As soon as we get that engineering done, we'll start looking at some grant opportunities, and we'll reach out to AMATs and see which direction they'd like to point us into finding some funding for it.
Okay, so that's not reflected in the budget yet?
No, I'd probably say 2026.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll go next. I had a question around our X2 tasers for the police department. Were 10 or so or more tasers replaced this year, like in the 2024 budget, or I'm trying to understand why they weren't planned for. It was my understanding we had to replace, like the initial model X1 had a 50% failure rate, 5-year lifespan. X2s are a 2-shot model. Just trying to understand, was that budgeted this year? Okay.
There were no tasers in the 2024 budget, I don't believe.
Okay, so if something, I see my note here now. So if something is, if it is taken from the proceeds of the drug unit task force, like, is that something that would not be budgeted in any way? Like, there wouldn't be a line item for that?
Can you restate? I didn't understand the question.
I'm just looking at some notes I took here for tonight. So your answer to my first question was no, but I guess let me restate my general question. Do we need to put taser replacements in the budget? Are we aware of that?
I have the budget that you have in front of you from the police department. To the best of my recollection, the only thing that we removed were 3 unmarked vehicles. The tasers, he is requesting a number of tasers. I don't remember the number. I don't have that right in front of me. But we have not denied any equipment request for the police department. So if there's a need, I would refer you to the chief and see if he would want to amend his budget request. But right now, we're budgeting all equipment that he requested, except, as I said, 3 unmarked vehicles.
Okay. And to your knowledge, were those replacements already done?
I do not recall
Okay.
talking about new tasers this year.
Okay.
But if he would have asked for, I have to go back and check my notes, but I don't recall dropping any number of equipment other than the vehicles.
Okay. No problem. And then I was going to flip over to Parks and Rec. So I know in previous years, at least the last 2 years, we've been talking about at the hole on B Field and getting lights at B Field. Was that explored in any further capacity?
Not right now. I believe Little League is interested in getting the Challenger field up and running in a better shape than what it is now. So I think they're focusing on the Challenger field.
But that's a capital improvement project that they're trying to raise money for. but would that necessarily divert all efforts to from other fields from our standpoint?
From our standpoint, that would be a huge expense for us to focus on those lights. Right now, we've got the request, and we are opting to put some money in some fencing for a ball field, upgrade one of the diamonds for the ball field, and then to put the gutters and downspouts on the concession stand at the Challenger field as well. So that's what we're kind of focusing on.
Mr. Bullis?
Yeah.
I just did look up, there are actually 10 new tasers in the 2025 budget in the police equipment in the Safety Service Income Tax Fund.
Thank you for reconfirming that.
Director Rohr, I did notice I'm sorry. It was just based on that question or what he just said. How is that fence $40,000? Is it,
It's a part of the fence. It might be a third of the fence. I need it's 75,000 total.
is it?
So we're just opting just to do the worst section, and we'll come back next year and do another 45,000.
Is that just the backstop?
No, sideline fences, the home run fence, and the backstop.
Thank you.
Well,
And just one follow-up to the taser question. When we met with the chief of police, he requested replacement of a third, and a third, and that is his intent of those tasers.
Thank you very much for reconfirming that. Okay, ask the question. Then the next question I was going to ask was around at MACA pool, and this might just need to refresh my memory. When we're either doing like same-day admissions or even with members scanning in, do we have any mechanism like a wristband we've explored for like re-entry or a way to monitor entry, once they're in the facility? I've just seen different facilities, like community pools having like wristbands that are, not paper, but, more like of a longer lasting that they can use, continuously.
We've done the wristbands, and they're not paper, they're meant to last a day.
Okay.
So we've done that in the past, and I think we go back and forth on whether it's worth it or not.
Did we look at some sort of scanning technology at some point with that? Or maybe not?
Not yet.
Okay.
So, since we're talking about parks, the couple projects that you mentioned, the downspouts and gutters, are some of these projects, are they projects that we can do internally?
Not the downspouts and gutters on that building. That's a metal roof building, and there's no overhang on that, and that's the problem. So when that building was constructed from the previous owners, they didn't put any overhangs on it, and so the water off the roof is eating into the footers of that building. So we need to stop that first and foremost. That's why we're opting to do that. And then we always do projects in-house. I mean, we're always constantly doing something in there.
So, like, for example, the fencing, I understand maybe the backstop, that's probably a more difficult installation. But, the outfield fence, is that something that we could do internally with our?
Now, that's a skill set. I mean, it's just like anything else. I mean, if you're a paving company, you know how to pave. If you're a fencing company, you know how to fence. You're not going to take some street guys that's used to throwing some asphalt in a pothole and have them try to put up a fence. It's not worth it.
Okay.
Director Rohr, just another question. I see in here under the capital construction purchase request, another fence line for Washburn Park.
Washburn, yes. So that fence was there initially. It was a wood slat fence. It started getting into disrepair. A new neighbor moved in. They bought the house next to the concession stand there in Washburn. We asked them if they cared. They said, no, go ahead and take the fence down. Well, they weren't there during the tournament season. And if you look at their yard and the park, there's no delineator that says that you're on private property. So they've asked us if we'd put back up the fence. We've opted to put up a 4-foot chain link fence to separate their property from ours. I mean, the fence was there originally.
In that 4-foot chain link fence going, looks like a couple hundred yards, that's only 13,000, but the other projects, that much more?
Get better fence.
Okay.
So the property fence, I mean, I'm not going to
Just a
say.
standard fence.
Yeah, it's a standard fence.
Also, I know you had brought up in previous meetings about your desire to start being more aggressive with street maintenance. I forget the process, I forget what you called it, that would make our asphalt streets last much longer. Have we started in this budget, budgeting a beginning of that process?
No, we do the crack sealing, and that's what we're doing. From the engineering companies that looked at all that stuff, they came back and they said, you get your best bang for chip seal. And I know Mr. Bozik's belief on chip seal, so why come back to this council and have a joke time at it? So right now, if you wanted to do something, it'd be chip seal, but I know the thought process of the president there, so it's not even worth bringing him back up.
Okay.
Feel free to bring it forth, though.
No, but in this budget, we are chip sealing some parking lots in the parks.
Okay.
There's no
and-
sense in paving those and wasting money on that. So there is in this budget some chip sealing going back into the parks.
But there's no plans on any sort of other maintenance projects on the roads themselves to make them last longer?
Now, crack seal,
Is that what it is?
yeah, we do a good job with crack sealing. And that's the next best thing. And then we'll just continue to crack seal. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of problems with potholes. So,
And is, just to kind of cover this too, as far as like our parking lots within the parks, we just did Lions Park, is that correct?
we did, we sealed Lions Park last year. We didn't do it this year. That's a different, that's a black sealant that's put on that parking lot.
So we sealed it, but refresh my memory then, the last border control meeting, we had talked about
We fixed pavement at
fixing
Indian
the
Hills.
pavement at where?
Indian Hills?
Indian Hills.
Yep.
Okay.
So there was about, I don't know, 60 by 100 section of that parking lot that had no base to it, and it fell apart. So before you chip seal, you got to fix that stuff, so.
Also, I saw a line item in there for striping. Is that a specific area, or is that like a citywide thing? I just noticed it was over $100,000.
Yes, so that's citywide. We do that annually. This year, 2025 is when we do everything. So every arrow, every word. Then we have an off year, and 2024 was the off year that we did the double yellow, the edge lines, and then the school zones. So it's an off.
Okay, so that's actual streets, that's not like the lots, the city lots or parking lots and
Nope.
stuff like that, that's striping of roads?
Yep, streets,
Does that include like crosswalks and stuff?
correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Last question I had for you, just as I hadn't heard about it before and I find it interesting, you have it in there about the ballards or whatever that you're putting around near the circle entrances and exits. What exactly are those gonna look like? Is it similar to what you have in the picture there?
Correct.
And did you say we already had that material? That's something we
No,
found?
the bollards around the circle is nothing new. I mean, they've been there before, and I think that's what Joe was saying. But this would be a wood guardrail system that's being proposed to go in there. It would be more aesthetically pleasing to the park. We need to do something, though. We talked with some engineers, and the only thing we can do, you can't put poles, you can't put rocks, you can't put planters, because if someone gets hurt, then we're responsible for it, believe it or not. The only thing you can do to protect that circle is put guardrail up.
So they can't be just ballard style, they have to have the actual piece coming across. I know I've seen in other areas, you go to a lot of big cities, you got those nice concrete stone, or not stone, but I don't know, it's like the small stone that you would lay on a garage floor, but they're kind of big units, and they always look nice. I didn't know if we explored any other options.
We did, and what you want to think is as many times as that circle gets breached, you want to fix it quickly. So you don't want to do anything nice, right? You don't want to build some structure that's going to lay there for 3 weeks because you can't get the mason back to fix it. So the guardrail is the best product to use.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got a couple questions. On the concession stand, I know you guys want to increase the hours in that, and your expenditure is $30,000. What are the hours that you guys are looking to have that open? Is it, just in the morning or in the
Tournaments.
evenings and all that, or?
Tournaments, when there's leagues going on. I mean, that concession stand has not been open but a handful of times since COVID started. So that 30,000 would be the right number.
And what kind of tournaments are you guys looking at doing? I know, I just saw the basketball stuff come out.
There's Taekwondo tournaments. I mean, there's pickleball tournaments. There's tournaments over there. There's use all the time you could open up that concession stand for.
And realize, just for clarification, that's only the food, equipment, those kind of things. That's not the salaries.
Yeah, I figured that was in the other part, okay.
And that's a service that our residents have been asking for, so we need to provide it for them.
If I could ask a quick question on that, just based off what Ted was talking about. The vending machines that are there right now, do we stock that, or is that vendor-based?
Contract.
Do we plan on leaving those, like when the food area is opened, are we planning on keeping those on?
Yes.
We have so far.
Okay.
Yeah, it never really caused much of a conflict.
I didn't know if we were gonna hope for more of or less of a competition with buy a pop from there, buy a pop from there, buy some candy from there, buy some candy from here.
When the concession stand's open, people gravitate towards that, and the machines stay. It's when the concession stand's not open, it's when those machines are used mostly.
And, I mean, we get a commission from the machine, so.
Okay.
Howe Road, how do we explain the process, Ms. Gilbride, of how we're going to fund the Howe Road project?
So like, how we would like to fund the Howe Road project is, when Mr. Rohr proposed the project, he would like to allocate the next 3 years of basically our street maintenance program that we would typically do towards the replacement and improvement on Howe Road. What my intention would be is, obviously, the first year we will use cash, but what we would like to do so that we do not have to piecemeal the project into 3 different bid projects, we will then do a short-term financing of the remainder of the project and put that into a plan to pay that off over the next 2 years. There's a couple different options that are available, either to do a 1-year note each of those years and then pay it down, or there's also some opportunities out there to do some shorter term stuff with banks where they're flexible with the payoff arrangements and those kind of things. So once we get to that point where we bid the project and need to finance it, I'll look at which seems to be more cost effective for the city, if we want to go through the 2-year process of issuing the notes or not. We will, the first year, also have available to us some funding we get through the county. The city gets allocated a part of permissive license tax that we can get from the county for specific roads that used to be county roads, and Howe Road is one of those. So that will also be included in the first year of the financing because it's a reimbursement basis. I have not inquired with them, but I will if they would allow the debt payment each year to be part. We get about $80,000 a year allocated to us that we can use for those road projects. So I'll have to inquire with them if they will accept the debt payments over the next 2 years also for the allocation of those funds or not. I'm not really sure about that, but we have, I think, let me look at my paper. Currently, we should have available to us next year about 230,000 for that. So next year, I anticipated 230,000 from that permissive tax reimbursement, 1,070,000 of cash from the general fund that we would use to pay, which would have been basically our road maintenance program, and then we would finance 2.6 million.
And that is not reflected, that financing, is it reflected in the revenue projection for 2025?
Yeah, so if you go to, so the Howe Road project is in the Fund 329, the Road Capital Fund. So I have those three revenue sources to pay
Yep.
for the project.
Thank you, thank you. And Mr. Rohr, if you're deferring maintenance for 3 years and you're spending on Howe Road, are you okay with that? Just
No,
I know what you're.
let me just be honest, nope. But it's the only way we're gonna get that road done.
Yeah. Wasn't there another street that was kind of an issue?
Indian Hills and, that was the road that was next. It was an F grade.
Okay. The whole way or part of it or?
It turns into concrete right there at Beechwood. So
Beechwood?
from
Okay.
East Avenue to Beechwood. is the
What
second.
would that cost?
I can have that by the next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
How long would that take?
That road,
Yeah, Indian Hills,
a day,
a day? How long would you anticipate Howe Road to be?
the summer.
Summer? And that would be from Cuyahoga Falls all the way down to,
No, from North Avenue to the roundabout.
okay, so that stretch.
Yes, sir.
What about Cuyahoga Falls to North Avenue? Is that an issue?
That section of Howe Road's in better shape. That scores a little bit better. That's like a D road, not an F. And what I'd like to do is, once we get the portion from north to the roundabout completed, I'd like to reach out to Cuyahoga Falls and see if they would want to partner up in doing that whole stretch.
And doing to the six corners?
Yep.
Okay,
We have a very small portion there,
yeah,
but there's no sense in us doing something if they're not going to do something on their end.
correct. Okay. How long do you think, how long do you think that will last? I mean, that, if it's a D, how long does it last?
10 years.
Okay,
Get 10 years out of it.
thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question about that project. I know the last couple meetings, when the Howe Road project has come up, we've kind of discussed about the engineering that we've done previously, in that it being the same width, but taking it down to 3 lanes with bike lanes. How do we foresee that, say, from the roundabout to North Avenue? Where's that lane going to be? And how does that transition, or where does it end when we get to North Avenue? What happens with that lane?
I'll get you the drawings by the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll bring you those 2 end drawings to show you how it goes, because the rest of it's a center turn lane, so.
So essentially, cost-wise, theoretically, could be the same if we were going to go 4 lanes, because we're still using the same width?
There's no difference.
Okay, so the only difference would be we would have to go back and do a re-engineering, or no? If we requested that?
It would just be the pavement marking, but keep in mind,
In the island, for crossing
The
island,
crossing
for the
the crossing
Freedom Trail
island of the Freedom
would be
Trail
gone if
becomes
you
the
went back to
problem.
4 lanes.
And that's the main reason why we're going down to 3 lanes, is to make it safe to cross Howe Road on the Freedom Trail.
It's a fast road.
Yeah.
And how do you slow it down? Well, you do lane narrowing is how you slow it down. And this isn't Mike Rohr saying this or the mayor saying, this is why you hire an engineer to come up with a safe alternative.
So the other concern that I had was the fair traffic. And not so much just for that 1 week of being the fair, but, they host multitude of events throughout the year. How are we going to negotiate that? If we're
Same way we do North Avenue, you'll put some navigators out there and move traffic to the center, and, I mean, same way we open up North Avenue to 4 lanes. It's only 2 right now, because we use the berm at the entrances. I mean, so that's nothing new. I mean, we'll just,
Well, okay, so the way I'm envisioning this currently, when the fair's in session or where there's a big event, they'll block off the right-hand lane if you're heading, say, westbound, and allow some traffic to go in through the right, and then the rest of the through traffic stays in the left center lane.
do the same thing. You just have to put out the navigator cones and have proper signage out there. I mean, it's nothing really changes,
So in essence, we'll be blocking the bike lane then at that point?
probably.
Okay. All right.
Is the bike lane going to be designated, is it just going to be striped for it, or is there going to be some sort of barrier there?
No, it'll just be striped.
Just striped?
And there'll be signage too.
Yeah, on the pavement, there'll be the bike symbol, and then the line will be there, and then there'll be adequate signage as well.
But there won't be any type of curb or anything?
No.
It's just, okay.
Question for the Director of Administration. On the redo of the budget that's dated for council work session November 6th, was the benefits, fringe benefits reflected from the cost containment meeting about the zero increase in the health benefit?
There have been no adjustments made since that meeting. No, we haven't adjusted anything.
So it hasn't been adjusted? Okay, all right, okay, thanks.
No, there's likely going to also, I mean, we're also in union negotiations, so those are going to be, being the year that it is, probably numbers that we'll potentially have to see after budget time
Got it,
reevaluated.
got it.
All right, I'm going to go back through the budget, and because I've placed little question marks on a couple things here. So community center, this is 101-357-017.
Which tab, please?
This is under the big budget,
Oh.
page 2.
Okay.
Says this project to be repaired in 2024, however, the repairs required additional engineering. Can you talk to us about what that engineering is and what the project is as a whole?
Sure. So what that is, Councilman, is the roof there at the entry point of, needs to get replaced, and there's a gutter that runs through it. It's a poor design. We talked with the roofing company. We thought we could get it done in-house. It's above anyone that could put together the engineering. It required an engineer to do this. So we had the $83,000 we budgeted for the repair. When the engineer got involved, he came back and says it's going to cost you the new dollar amount of $132,000. So that 83 is being carried over. So it's making up the majority of that 132.
All right, thank you. And then on page 3, under contractual services, increase due to roof engineering required. I'm sorry. This is under the rec center. Can you explain what that cost is?
Yeah, so there's issues with the roof at the rec center. It's reaching that age where it needs either replaced or rehabbed. There again, need to get an engineer to decide what to do and how to do it. So that's what that cost is.
All right. On page 4, under contractual services in the zoning department, consulting services for planning, can you touch on those?
So it's legal services, it's engineering, and the other costs in there is a software that's used. That's the annual fee, so that's the increase.
Okay. And this is that software that I think we talked about previously.
Yep,
Okay.
it integrates the street department and all the departments are using it right now.
Okay.
Using it. And I believe that it's also the comprehensive plan is in there as well.
Okay. On page 5, under mayor and administration salaries and wages, we have a funds economic developer position. I know we haven't talked too much about the personnel, but if we can just kind of give us your vision of that position and what their job duties would entail.
We're going to continue to try to find the right person to come in and do economic development in the city. We are still contracting with Insight because they've been very valuable to us over this last year, and we need to make sure that we have someone doing it. So we are, like it says, we are budgeting for the economic developer's position, and we're going to be looking to try to find the right person.
So you mentioned Insight being, would that fall under the contractual services?
Yes, no, they'd be under economic development, yes.
So other economic development would be,
Yes.
current budget is 75,000. Next year's, we're planning on going to 96,000.
Right, because for the first 3 months of this year, we had a reduced contract with Insight, and then we expanded it because we did not have somebody, we could not find somebody to fill that spot in the office.
Okay.
So we expanded their contract, and so we'll be keeping that until we can find.
So the cost of utilizing Insight is 96K for next year.
Yes.
And then the additional cost for when we find the economic developer position.
For one, so right now, we're getting 3 people for like $96,000. We would get one person for roughly $145,000.
I didn't know what you said, but it's about 138 if I recall.
138, okay.
That's
That's
base
including
salary or
ben-
that's with benefits?
Benefits, I was
Salary
just
and
going to say that.
Salary benefits, okay.
Right.
And I would just add that we are, in the position description, we are amending that to include grant writing, so to focus on researching of grants, to work with the other departments and to assist with the grant writing, so we can dedicate someone to grant, part of their duties to grant writing. We do have grant administration right now in community development, but as far as time for the various agencies to go out, search, and find a grant, we're going to basically have someone whose a percentage of their job is going to be searching for grants. And we have a start on that. We have a document that we can use as a basis for that.
So have we considered utilizing like a third party for all of our grant writing where, they take a percentage based on the amount that we receive?
I think the consulting model for that is more a per job hourly rate or retainer. We did work with one company that provided us, after interviewing the department heads across the city, went out and put together a document that I discussed, a base document that we have that will help us find those grants. They and other companies, I'm not tied to any company, but we're not budgeting for that. But yes, there are companies that could do that. That is something that we're interested in. Just to be honest with you, 5 months into the job right now, everything going on, we just didn't get time to research that. That position, those funds can pay for themselves
Right.
if you get the right consulting company to assist you. And that's the key, is finding that company that works well with the city of Tallmadge and our culture.
Well, and that was kind of my thought process here. And, if a certain percentage of this economic developer's job is grants, we could have them solely focus on just economic development, but then utilize that third party for the grants. And like you said, it's going to pay for itself essentially. I think that might be a better use of our funds, but, or at least that position. I think that would certainly be something and I understand being, 5 months into this, haven't had quite the time to do it, but I think it would be extremely beneficial, just knowing from my experience within the Parks and Recreation Department, we don't have the time to apply for grants, and Jessica Simons is here from our Parks and Rec Department. We never had time to write grants. We're not experienced in grant writing. It takes a certain skill set to go out and find, research, make sure we're qualified, and then put in the time and effort to actually do those. So I feel like those companies that do that day in, day out are going to be spending probably a third of the time as to what this position could be spending. And I think that focus of that economic development position would be better suited to focus on just economic development as a whole. So if that's something that,
Well, you have to understand, grant writing is an economic development,
absolutely,
too.
right,
so,
but
They could be our liaison with
yeah.
that.
they could be our
correct.
lia-
They could
yeah.
be.
They
a
could be the main point of
liaison
contact.
between that.
And I have met with several companies that do grant writing as a contracting, so we do have those.
Okay.
Do I hear you, Mr. President, telling me to amend the budget that we've submitted?
Well, possibly, but so that's a good segue to my other question about Insight. So with Insight being at 96,000 for next year, can you, because I know when we originally talked about this back when Mayor Klein was the mayor, when we were hesitant to kind of go out on that limb with them, and we obviously did. But we were also asking for some tangibles, some areas that we could see some physical results. I guess if you can kind of walk us through your best, here's our justification for why we absolutely need Insight and we can't do without them.
Well, I guess one of the key things would be that the umbrella that they're under the umbrella of a developer. And they have been invaluable in being able to work with their parent company in order to bring interest to the city on different projects. So there's been a lot of conversations, and there's a lot of talk within the development company or development industries about Tallmadge and how we are being proactive and trying to, especially with the West Avenue overlay, the neighborhood center overlay, trying to reinvigorate our city, and it's being noted in the development industry. And that probably would not have happened if Insight hadn't been very instrumental in helping us promote and establish these overlays. That is just one item that they've done for us. They have worked on a new business handout. Joe, you're more versed on what they're actually,
Right,
I don't have it in front of me. They've worked on.
We
Read it.
provided you with the new business handout
Right.
they'll leave behind for the BREs, and then we're working on one more document.
Right.
More of a fact sheet on Tallmadge, just a quick reference type fact sheet, so that are business, not a homeowner, but, things a business owner wants to see. One of the things that they bring because of their past experience, the people that we're working with, especially Mr. Joyce, who was here, he brings in those connections and people willing to talk to us. Economic development is it's not kind of, as I've said along the way with West Avenue or general improvements, it's a slow process till you reach a tipping point and you get that one destination feature, for lack of a better term, whether it be the circle and the walk through underneath, new businesses, national level businesses on West Avenue, high-end type areas. Those connections, we just don't have at this level. Even with an economic developer reaching out to some of the potentials that may come in on West Avenue, we just don't have those connections. And so part of what Welty does is that, the BREs that we do, we could, the economic developer will, be doing those on a regular basis and much more, just because we're limited 2 hours per month by the contract. But it's that partnership, and through this next year, as we make those changes to the different overlays that are already approved, but where they're actually going, those connections, those relationships, and it's the patience for that long-term investment. It's the investment now that we see is going to turn, it's a longer-term investment for the larger type projects that we're looking for.
And some of the other things that Insight does kind of behind the scenes is when we have businesses come to us, and we did earlier, it was prior to when Joe came in, they wanted to build in Tallmadge. They were getting ready to build, very hesitant because the costs keep going up and up and up. And Insight was able to give them the connections to the different funding sources and the different grant opportunities through the state that they could apply for, and they helped them apply for it, and they helped them get the reduced financing to help those projects go through. So they have helped us tremendously throughout
Mayor,
the year.
I know when I came to council, we had a discussion about Insight and what your vision was for that. You had mentioned to me that it was more of a bridge the gap scenario. You were waiting on your director of administration to come on. You wanted to get him on and sort of then search for the economic developer that you were looking for. I'm afraid that, with our heavy reliance on Insight, that maybe we're not making this the priority that I know many member of council have expressed that we'd like to see a economic developer in-house.
And is there any reason why we can't have both?
If there's
We could have a director of economic development in-house, working diligently, and they could be working with Insight that has those connections, and it's the relationships that they've already built. So there's not any reason why we couldn't have both. If we really want to concentrate on economic development, the best avenue would be to have both. We could, once we get the director of economic development up to speed with where Insight is, we can dial back a contract.
Well, I've noticed that, from one of the previous versions of the budget here, they've went from 80,000 now up to 96. So it's continuing to climb. What is being asked for, is that?
The original contract, and correct me if I'm speaking incorrectly here, the original contract was for a lesser number of hours, and at this moment, I don't remember the hours for the contract. Those hours were increased, and I believe that some of the funding, that they actually came back to council, and funding was transferred from the economic developer position to that. So that's why I believe this line is only where it was, and that the 96 is for a full year with additional hours and to work and get, to be honest with you, this is crucial to have them to have the education process and that knowledge of transfer. What our base salary is and what we're going, the market and the experience level is on the lower end. Welty, during this next year, the contract, and then wholeheartedly support the mayor's idea to dial Insight back in the '26 budget. But that transition, that cross-pollination, those relationships that Insight can make with our developer in that community would be invaluable during this time. In essence, it's compared to law enforcement, it's kind of like a field training officer exercise. We're not going to get a high-level, very seasoned economic developer with the salary that we have.
Plus $96,000 we might.
And unfortunately, I did interview somebody that probably had that seasoning that we needed, and he would not come to Tallmadge because it's too small, there wasn't enough to do, and we couldn't pay them enough.
And believe me, under my leadership and management, there'll be more than enough to do for the economic developer. You can ask those officers that report to me now.
Just a follow-up, I think what would help, I know that this year, we got a copy of the contract with kind of the detailed deliverables and duties, job description. So it would almost be understanding the comparison between the economic developer as a full-time employee job duties and how those would differentiate from the duties of the Insight contract, and almost like just filling in, I think that's the gap, because with the contract renewal from 24 to 25, it's almost renewing as if someone won't be there. And I know we mentioned dialing back, but I think for our education to make an informed decision on that line item, is that 96, is if the economic developer's not even staffed. And then if they are staffed, what is that
We
gap?
fully intend to staff that
Yeah,
position.
yeah. So if, with that assumption in mind, if that person is fully staffed, what are they doing today that maybe they wouldn't be doing tomorrow if that person's in place? What would that person take on in terms of their job duties that Insight has today? And then would their hours be reduced? Would the contract be reduced? And then look at it that way, because I think that's the gap. It looks right now on paper, it looks like you're paying for the same thing. From a.
I don't know how many ways and how many times we can explain. I'm using the wrong word, so please ask in a different way so I can answer. But the fact of the connections, the ability to get us into the door, the knowledge that they bring at a much higher seasoned level is invaluable to a small town like Tallmadge. When you can't get the high-level economic developer that the mayor interviewed and says no, and this price is probably there. I mean, that's how it is. So I'm just, out of all the things in the budget that we're asking for, it's just, I don't understand, and, the difficulty with Insight there. I'm not sure what's going on, so please help me understand this.
Yeah, just to follow up on my question, I just think there's a gap on council in terms of the job description and the duties expected in terms of the hours that are contracted in 2025. That's what I was asking, essentially. What's just helping you mentioned relationships and networking and bringing clientele in, things like that. Just trying to differentiate the duties of once somebody is established and building those relationships, that's full-time, within 12 to 24 months, as they're building that community relations, I'm just trying to differentiate those duties long-term is what I think is the better way to rephrase it.
Okay, I'm sorry,
No, you're.
I just see the value from my, experience.
What I think I can kind of add to that is, I kind of see Insight as it's proposed now being kind of like that employee, more or less, but then you're also asking for an employee in the budget as well. But I think what a better explanation of what Insight is doing is more of a contractual service that maybe necessarily isn't worthy of the full 96 because it's a project-by-project basis. It's not so much of a, hey, here's the city, here's free reign. I think when we look at, for example, the West Avenue, that appears to be the bulk of what they're working on at the moment. So I think in my eyes, at least, that's more of a project to say, help us develop this plan for West Avenue, and what is the price for it? As opposed to give us this amount of hours per business retention meetings, which essentially could be utilized by the employee, which don't require necessarily that connection, Rolodex of people, because, they're already here in the city. So you don't need that connection, so to speak. I understand having the connections, outside of our city limits and to be able to help recruit to bring here. But I think that would be something you would still get from them if it was project-based to say, hey, here's West Avenue, what's the cost for doing the West Avenue project? And can you assist us in finding, clients that would be interested in developing here? I think that's still part of that project as a whole, as opposed to saying, welcome to the city, you have free range, and we hope that something sticks, more or less. That's how I kind of view it from my end. I don't know if maybe anyone else on council has another point of
That's very
view.
helpful, I appreciate.
Question, so your intent is to hire an economic developer in 2025?
Correct.
Have we begun that process today?
Yes, we started, it's looking and rewriting, validating the job description. We have done that. We've funded it here. We have not advertised it yet. This is not the ideal time as you're going in the holidays that people are doing transition. We have been working many other things in the city, so we were looking at advertising it towards the end of December. Because
And we honestly don't have the money in the budget to fund it for this year because we moved that money over to pay for Insight.
I understand that, but if you found someone that was worthy, I would wholeheartedly expect you to come to council and say you want to hire that person. I mean, even though it's not in the budget. I mean, please do. I mean, that's what we're here for.
okay.
I don't want a budget to be a deterrent if there is something that we need. We come to council all the time and ask for additional funding for projects because things break and whatnot, right? That's a valuable asset that I feel, in my opinion, needs to have rather than outsourcing it. Because like Mr. Bozick said, what Insight is doing right now is project-based with the West Avenue overlay, right? It's strategic, it's a project. And our intent at the beginning when we approved them was not to have them do a project, it was to help foster economic development. Now, I understand that it turned and spiraled into a project, right? But at the time when we approved that, we did not know that. We weren't told that, where, okay, if you really wanted to use them for the West Avenue overlay, then we could have looked at them as a project-based economic development firm or arm or consultant to help with that overlay district.
So I'm just a little confused because they have done more than just the West Avenue overlay. Like I had stated, they have helped existing businesses retain funding and financing in order to build new buildings within our city. They have scheduled and gone with us to all of the BREs and have given us follow-ups and have followed up on different items, worked on a number of the projects that you guys have all approved to help businesses that were being displaced because of because of sheets coming in. They worked with one of the other businesses to try to find them another facility within Tallmadge. They worked tirelessly on that for a long period of time. So they have done a lot. It's just you guys, I guess, aren't.
So specific
seen it.
question, was there a business that was displaced because of sheets?
There's a small business that, I think it was
Deems Glass.
Deems Glass,
Okay.
yeah.
And after several sites and projects, they decided not to,
They decided to run the business out of their home
right,
instead.
they were, yeah,
I guess where I keep getting hung up here is when I did come to council, I was told that this was a bridge to the gap, that the goal and the immediate goal, because the administration understood council's desire to have this full-time spot that we're using inside as a crutch at this point, not to hire that, which we've asked for. We were told, it was going to be a top priority when the director of administration was put into place. Now we're asking for an increase in not only what they're doing, but the hours that they're doing it. And that's after council was told, when I had asked for, originally when we were talking about approving them and adding the money from the director or the economic developer position to them, I had asked for, okay, can they give us monthly or bi-weekly updates on what they're doing, what they're involved in, and more upfront information. And I was told that, well, that's going to take more of their time and more of their budget, and I don't think that that's prudent. And I don't think that you guys should be that surprised that council doesn't really maybe understand the value that maybe you're seeing in them, because we don't get a lot of information on what they're doing. We don't get a lot of insight on where they're working and how they're spending their time and how they could be more impactful than a full-time economic developer, even if we took half of the money we're paying them to increase the salary on the administration side to get more of a top-tier candidate in. I think that Mayor, based on your request, it was put to us as in, I'm building my administration. I need time to build this administration, and I need something to, again, bridge the gap there. And I feel we're there. We've given the time to bridge the gap, and maybe Insight is turning into I don't want to say a crutch, but a crutch or a growing reliance on them versus what was communicated by council as one of their big-time desires. And that was getting that Director of Economic Development filled.
Well, as Mr. Ignazito has mentioned, since he's come here, the amount of work that he's doing is insurmountable right now, between putting together this budget, negotiating 5 contracts, learning the city. Just the amount of work has been amazing. And we're also kind of like unifying the whole city and all the departments together. We're having, interdepartment meetings so that all the departments know what everybody else is doing. We're really trying to bring that cohesiveness together as to one city, one department, everybody knowing what everyone else is doing. So there has been an immense amount of work that has happened here at the city, and hiring that Director of Economic Development, I'm sorry it didn't happen yet, but we are committed to getting it done.
And
And we need to make sure that we find the right person.
I agree. I think that's important. Like I said, I just know that we made it known that that was a priority for council.
And I think you can understand, too, I want to hire the right person. I'm not hiring my friends. I hired a retired colonel to be our Director of Administration. I have hired a professional for our Director of Human Resources. I need to hire that right
Yeah,
person
and
for economic development.
I wouldn't want you to hire somebody just to get somebody in the door.
Exactly.
But, you know, according to our Director of Administration, we haven't even advertised this position yet.
We, quite honestly, haven't had time to because we've been so busy. There's so much that's going on in this city right now.
And if you don't mind, Mayor, thank you
Yes.
for the kind words. It's a team effort, what we do here. It doesn't rely on one person, and we're all working very hard. And Councilman Rubino, I did not know about your request for information on Insight or anything, and what you were told, and based on what your talk or discussion this evening, we can definitely look at providing, more detailed information on what they do on a regular basis to support Tallmadge. I think that it's very reasonable to look at downscaling Insight once we get through the discussions on West Avenue, have someone on board, and West Avenue's moving forward. I don't think anyone here in this room anticipated Insight to be able to have a developer, multiple developers to become interested in a property within the city. When that became apparent and Insight started to focus on that, they're doing exactly what we pay them to do, and that is to work with those people, be that bridge, and to bring them to the table and to meet with us. And they have done that, which has led to a much more focused, laser focus on West Avenue, not at the expense of other areas, though. They are still talking to businesses. We are still making calls. If we haven't reached out to a business and they reach out to us, we'll go out there and talk to them. I mentioned that at council meeting, I believe last time, that we had that happen with one of the properties. That's in an ideal spot in a good location, and they've had multiple people look at it and just can't get a buyer. We didn't know that they've had multiple people looking at it, and things haven't worked out. So, that's one of the target focus areas that we want to do. So, I don't think, I've never heard anybody say the intent for Insight was to hire them to do a project. It has morphed into that, which I think long-term, with or without the overlay, is very beneficial to the city of Tallmadge. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure we would have got that without them. And that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about them, because I've lived in the city before. I've been back here all the time. I've seen what happened to our gateway to Akron. It goes up and down. It's cyclical. It's at a point where it just needs help. And we have that opportunity. And I'm very passionate, and I'm sorry that my passion comes out sometimes, about revamping that. Because I remember what it was like 30 years ago when I started here.
So, if I can, it sounds like there's a developer that's interested in the West Avenue,
That reach, yes,
that has reached out to them or to the city.
both actually. Through Insight, they connected us with them. It's all the private property owner who wants that. And that's what they were talking about, that Mr. Joyce was talking about when he was here.
Yeah.
And then the one engineering gentleman.
And so, time frame wise, like when would that have had happened?
When did they reach out to us?
Yes.
End of June, beginning of July?
Roughly, yeah.
Right, within probably a 2-week time frame around there.
And,
And it's because of a direct connection to it.
right, so, and I get that, I understand that. So I think what the other part of it was, that a lot of us were taken back on from the previous meeting that we had last week in regards to West Avenue was the fact that there was a neighborhood overlay in addition to that. So, again, I guess my question that I'd asked back last week was, is the developer dependent upon having a neighborhood in addition to commercial space? Or is it just commercial space?
Well, the neighborhood overlay is something that council approved already, and it's part of our zoning code, just so we level set that. So that's already there. It's just not assigned anywhere. So in talking at the second meeting, because we've had 3 meetings, business-focused, then resident-focused with business attendants, and then everyone, we had everyone there who came in, and
If I might just interject right here, I just want to make sure that we stick to the agenda topic. So if we can
Oh,
draw
absolutely.
it back to
It's all
the
related to the
budget.
budget, so.
So
yes.
we're getting into
Getting
another
the-
topic and we didn't notice that topic and we need to, for sunshine law purposes, so I'm just,
Understand, it's all
we can
related
just
to the
circle
budget,
back to
essentially.
that. Thank you.
Certainly related to the budget, so I think it's worthy of asking.
I think it started there, but I think we're drifting, so
Yeah,
I'm
we're
just
drifting to-
cautioning.
Yeah.
It's a matter of opinion. I think that we're well within our right to ask questions about that. So going back to how we develop that area, I think also in tying into the budget, one, has Insight ever looked at or provided any kind of plan or proposal for the use of city-owned property off the circle, meaning the properties we own on Southwest? Has there been any movement on that whatsoever?
no, that has not been a primary focus of their work.
Okay, so, and this is, I think, where, as members of council, knowing that, one, the city has purchased and owns that property, we have since removed a tenant, or asked the tenant to leave based on the status of the property. And then so now we have vacant land that has no plan. And it appears that Insight hasn't developed any plan or even been asked to, hey, can you investigate this? I think that
We can't really sell that until we know the condition of the building and if it can be used, remediated, or moving forward. So it's not really a viable property
Right.
at this moment in time.
And I get that, but we've owned that property since 2017. And, obviously, you weren't mayor then, but we've done nothing with the property. We haven't planned on anything with the property until we discovered the status of the property and decided to ask the tenant to leave because of the
No,
status.
back in
So-
2017, or I believe it was 18, our former economic development director, Rita Weinberg, she did go and the city spent considerable amount of money on a request for proposal for a site, and it went out there, and we got no takers on it at all.
Right.
And so-
Additionally, to develop that site requires much more property than the property that we own. And there were other surrounding property owners were approached about selling their property to us, and they would not sell it to the city. So there was at one point that done, but the amount of property that we own at that site to develop a major development is not enough, so there would have to be other property acquisition.
So, as I
And
recall,
Insight does know about the property that we own there on Southeast. They do know that it connects to the A&W site. They have been in contact with the broker for the A&W site. There just is there's no bites. I mean,
Ms. Gilbride and I, and even Ms. Raber might remember, because we were involved with the CIC, no one else here was, there was an environmental issue on, wasn't it where the common grounds is, because it was connected to the gas station? It butts up with the gas station. I thought there was an environmental study.
For the
that-
specifics, it may have just been that there's a potential
Yes,
environmental issue
there's like a phase
because
one.
of the placements of the gas tanks on the.
I
that's-
believe
That's
there
a
was-
possibility. I don't remember it specifically,
Yeah, I
but
think there was a phase one done, and they said that something might need, yeah.
So kind of going back to my point is that when members of council are looking at this contract or future contracts with Insight and looking at kind of how we've contracted with them, being that it's an hourly based, monthly, hours type contract. And, we understand that you guys only have so many hours in the day. We get that. Insight's only permitted so many hours in the day. But I guess going back to what Councilman Pavlik had stated was, by all means, come back to us and say, hey, if we had Insight for an additional 20 hours, we can, work on this property on Southwest Avenue. But I think what we're trying to express is that they're not even really looking at that property now. We haven't necessarily seen the results from their contract as it stands.
Maybe you guys haven't seen it, but we've seen it. Okay.
And just a reminder, I specifically asked to see it on a regular basis and was told, no, that would take up too much of Insight's time, so.
And as I
Just
said,
as a
I
reminder of that.
I don't know when that was, because,
That was before you came.
okay,
Yeah.
so, and the mayor told me probably about 4 weeks ago, get this out there, so it is on me, and we will work at getting that position out. This is not the ideal time, but we will, the HR has made, we have the position ready to go and to be posted. So we will work on getting that out before this budget is approved.
Thank you. I was going to move to a different topic, something that I forgot to ask earlier. Give me 1 second. So I'm just looking at page 1 of the budget. For the police personnel line for salaries and wages, I know I see the 2 new officers here. Can you just explain, from my understanding in 2024, and then compared that to 2025, how is the school resource officer structured and budgeted in the salaries and wages planned for 2025 compared to 2024?
There is a contract, or an agreement, I should say, between Tallmadge City Schools and the City of Tallmadge that was executed and is self-re-executing on a yearly basis. I believe it's June 1st, which coincides with the TSC's budget year, and they pay for 2/3 of one officer.
Okay, so currently it's 2/3 of one officer,
That's correct.
and it's a shared cost.
Yes, the City of Tallmadge pays for one officer and 1/3 of the second officer.
Okay, got it. And then the plans for 2025 and beyond is to maintain that current structure?
What we have alerted the superintendent of is the fact that when the current document is up for self-renewal, that we will execute the opportunity not to self-renew, because we would like to discuss with them about splitting the cost equally. No commitments of any sort have been made. We've just informed them that when they start planning and working on their budget, that we will be asking them to fund one resource, one SRO, which according to the research our chief has done is the standard practice. The current contract was implemented well before I came on board, and it was something that the Chief Bohan pointed out to us when discussing budgets and adding officers, and we have approached Mr. Superintendent Wood when we had our most recent city and administration meeting that we have on a quarterly basis.
Okay. So no concerns in this current budget for 2025 that we're looking at?
There could be a possibility if the school board and the superintendent were to agree to a new agreement, that there could be the possibility of paying that remaining 1/3 for a police officer. But as I said, we haven't had any discussions on that, just other than we want to let you know where we have not increased officers basically since the time that I left this department. And so through agreements that were made prior to my arrival, all for the right reasons, SROs are an asset to the school and to the city. We've put officers in there, and so that's taken 2 officers off the road. And so, and the chief has looked, and, you know, there are, based on calls for service, based on increasing calls for service, there are requirements for additional officers in patrol. And so this budget provides for that. He would like a couple of more. He has 3 hires next year. That's going to max out their FTO, field training officer ability. So we're at the highest level that we can do to throughput to get those officers on the street fully functional in 2026. If it's a lateral entry, it's a little less time.
Okay. Thanks so much. That really helps my understanding.
On page number 11, under fire capital, we have Overdale Station improvements. I know we've tried to utilize some of those improvements, or do some of those improvements this past year. Can you just walk us through what those improvements look like? Is this different from what we talked about this past year, or is this the same plus some? Just kind of walk us through what that is.
So Councilman, the improvements have been minimal this year. The windows got replaced, the one exterior door got replaced. The restroom was redone. We went out to bid to get more of the building completed. The bid came in over the estimate, and there was only one bid. And then something happened, the sanitary line failed, and so that ate up some of the funding. And thank goodness we didn't get any of the projects, the updates done was because the whole sanitary line had to be redone through the assistant chief's office. So thankfully, we didn't do that first.
And even though we're looking at working with Mike and bringing someone in to evaluate both buildings, that is a long-term project. So we need to, Station 1 needs those additional services to get them, to a better place. And then the police department, some of their improvements, they're just finishing up a few things, ceiling tiles and some, which are very costly, believe it or not. Finish up the basement. It's about $21,000, I believe. They're doing a much lower level of updates than what they've done, and trying to be minimal because we don't know where we're going to be going in the future, and that future is still 3, 5, 7 years down the road, so the buildings have to be functional.
and I totally agree that we need to make those improvements as it is now. Again, kind of thinking long-term, and I know the mayor and I have talked one-on-one about this, but what do we anticipate, or how do we go about planning for the future of the police department building, whether we're going to continue having it there? I know we've talked a little bit about, the community center building. Is there a plan in place for future budgets to address some of the kind of long-term plans?
And that is what I mentioned, the $30,000 structural assessments, are the building assessments, I should say, that are budgeted for both Station 1 and the police department. Once we have those engineering reviews and have an idea of, is it cost effective to, for example, completely hypotheticals, because we have no idea what it'll do. Maybe it's more cost effective to temporarily relocate the police department and gut the building and redo that. We don't know. Maybe they're going to say, no, modern policing doesn't match what 50 years ago does. And oh, by the way, station number 1 is, in the same situation, and then we need to build most likely a public safety service center, public safety center. But we won't know what we need to budget for until we've had those assessments, which will be scheduled this year.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, do you have any other follow-up questions related to the budget, additions of personnel, anything related to this? Any closing remarks from anyone on council? No. Administration, any closing remarks?
I want to thank Director of Administration Ignazito for all of the hard work him and Molly put into. I want to thank Finance Director Gilbright as well. The amount of work that they put into this budget is amazing. Countless hours and hours and hours have been spent on this. I want to thank them personally. I want to thank all the elected officials in City Hall. I want to thank council for all of your help. All of the department heads that have spent tireless hours putting together their desires and then knowing that, they're going to come here and say, well, this is what we need, and then we have to cut it down to a fourth because of budget constraints. So I want to thank everyone, all the department heads, everyone from the street, garage, utilities, park and recreations, IT, police and fire. Thank everyone for their hard work towards this, and look forward to your continued questions.
I also want to thank the mayor, Ms. Gilbride, the Director of Administration, and Service Director Rohr for meeting with Mr. Bolus and I previously to go over the budget, and we spent 2 hours going over some things. So if there's any council members that have any questions, from where I sit or I see, as the finance chair, I'd be more than happy to talk with any one of you. And then the other question I have is on number 7, additional meeting dates if needed. How does that, Ms. Raber, how does that work if we need additional? Because we're going into second reading, that's council meeting, then we go into third reading in December. We've only got 2 more council meetings for the end of the year.
That's right. So historically, people have asked questions. If they have a suggestion, they ask that an amendment be made before that second reading. So get feedback to administration as quickly as possible. We haven't typically had a second meeting, but if you want to set one, you can set one. You need to set it preferably in an open forum, whether it's tonight or whether it's at next official council meeting. You can
Is there a time frame that Mr. Bozick has to set that meeting? Like, he could say, hey, we're setting a meeting for Friday and it's tomorrow, is there a?
So
is there
there's
a lead time?
there's an emergency provision, but it wouldn't be an emergency. So I would recommend that you do it in one of your public meetings. You discuss when it would be best and you set
Got
it
it.
at a public meeting. So whether it's tonight or again next Thursday night during a
Got it.
regular council meeting, you could do it there.
I'm not suggesting we need another meeting, I just wanted to know the process.
Thank you.
That's all. That's all,
Yeah,
that's all.
our office
It's
doors
just-
are open for any
yeah.
questions.
Let the record show that Mr. Pavlik would like another meeting.
No, I didn't.
And I want to echo everything that's been stated. I appreciate the hard work you guys have done to put everything forth, and for entertaining our hard questions sometimes, or helping us understand where we're at on certain funds and just everything. So we appreciate your guys' hard work. And I think the citizens are really the ones that benefit from us having such great dialogue back and forth on addressing all of the city's needs and infrastructure that is required to keep our city moving forward. So again, thank you. As far as additional meetings, so going back to, I believe next Thursday, we have our council meeting. This will be at second reading. So at that point, if there were to be any amendments, bring the amendments up at that point, or should we try to at least put those out front before the meeting?
I highly recommend that you get your suggestions to administration. They can weigh those. If they want to include that, they can include that in a revision that's before you. If not, then you can do it on the floor as well, but it's just easier if everybody can see it in writing sometimes ahead of time. So
Okay.
if you have certain, tweaks, I suggest you make the suggestion ahead of time if possible.
Okay. All right, so as members of council, we need to make sure that we're, finish up our review of the budget prior to next week's meeting, and if we do have suggestions, I highly recommend that we forward those on. I think for transparency's sake, if we can make sure that, a director or chair of finance is included on the email, that gets sent to the administration, just so we have a good understanding of where we're at with any suggestions. Any other,
But I also recommend that if you're going to copy me on that, any kind of questions or anything, please copy Mr. Bozick as well as President of Council.
thank you. Any other information for this evening? With that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and a second to adjourn. We will take a cast of a verbal vote. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none. We are adjourned. The time is
8:37.
8:37. Thank you.